sir.
Should I stand up here?
Yeah, for just a second.
Okay.
We're going to stand. This is dead center. All right, and we are on, we're running, we got sound, and I will double check this when we do our intro. All right, I need a haircut too, that's okay.
Well, myself.
Edit, 3, 2, 1. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are in Austin, Texas, and this young man standing here is none other than Chip McCormick himself. And of course, Chip has had a very spectacular career in shooting. Of course, he is a manufacturer. How about an entrepreneur? And yes, he's going to be doing some features for us on our program, giving you folks some ideas about how to shoot a gun fast and accurately. And tell you the truth, he's one of the best qualified people in the country. Now, Chip is a 2-time world speed shooting champion, and of course his office, he's got trophies and plaques for days in here. And we're so pleased to have him on the program today. Chip makes some very unique products that I know a lot of you are going to be interested in, and will certainly help all of us. Edit. All right. And we're going to come back up and we'll say, Chip, what you going to show us? What are you going to show us?
Okay.
And tell us some of your. All right. Stand up one more time. We're going to come back. All right. We're going to come back and say, all right. Edit. Back in. 3, 2, 1. Now, Chip, what are you going to show us today?
Well, Johnny, let me start off by kind of telling you how I got started in this program. I manufacture performance improvement products for 1911. Way back when I started competing in world-class competition for the purpose of winning trophies like this and titles, I began my effort to improve the performance and the dependability of the 1911 pistol. That kind of evolved into a business, and now that's my full-time effort now in business, is to deliver products to the public, the 1911 owner, to improve the performance and dependability in their pistols. And to do that with products that are very simply installed and easy to understand, but make your pistol a lot more fun to shoot. And
when you said easily installed, that's a big one.
That is a big one, because people commonly believe that when you do any improvement to your pistol, you have to send it to a gunsmith, and it's gone for weeks or months at a time, and it's going to cost a whole lot of money. And we're trying to put a stop to that. We're trying to make those performance improvements easy. We're increasing the capacity of the pistol, and we're making the trigger pull equal to that of what we think a master grade gunsmith could do.
Well, all right. Well, let's take a look.
Okay.
Good. Okay, edit. 3, 2, 1.
You know, Johnny, one thing you learn in competition is your equipment. You're constantly trying to improve the performance and dependability. And the pistols that I was using in these world championships were certainly state of the art, and I think their performance and dependability was as good as any pistol on the market at the time. Now what I'm trying to do today is to deliver products to the 1911 owner that give him performance and dependability improvements. First thing I'd like to discuss with you is my very first product, which was the 8-round 1911 magazine. The original 1911 magazine was a 7-shot magazine, and what I have here is a patented follower device, which associated with the spring, you install that in your standard 1911 magazine, and immediately you get 8 rounds in there. Now, we sell the magazine complete. As a matter of fact, we're fortunate that 2 of America's top 1911 manufacturers use these magazines as factory standard in their pistols. I think that's testimony to the performance improvement and the dependability. But we do sell just a spring and follower kit, and it installs very easily in your standard magazines, just like this. And that's all it takes, and your 7-round magazine's now an 8-round magazine. The other products that we make is a replacement hammer and sear. You replace the standard hammer and sear that came with your original 1911, this being a copy of a 1911, and what you end up with is what, in my opinion, is a master grade trigger pull. Now, it's basically designed for a gunsmith to install and safety check the mechanism, but really anybody qualified to remove and replace parts in a 1911 is capable of installing these components.
All right, now edit. We're going to get a shot of the hammer and sear, and I'm going to just let the camera run with freeze frame. And I've got a good shot of that lube in there while we're at it, just for fun. It's perfect. It's already in there.
Oh, okay.
So you can talk about, and you just might put your finger over on that lube there. And,
Okay.
all right, edit back. We'll come back in and you want to talk about that hammer and sear and the lube?
Yeah, we'll talk about the hammer and sear a little bit.
Okay. All right, we've got our picture. Edit. 3, 2, 1.
Johnny, this hammer and sear utilizes some of the most state-of-the-art technology available in manufacturing today. The hammer and sear is cut out of a steel plate with an EDM process. That stands for electrical discharge machining. That's a process that can cut a profile to a tolerance of 1,000. That is 1/3 the thickness of your human hair. And that's real important to get the performance that we want is we're holding very close tolerance. Now, another thing that we're able to accomplish is we put a polish we call the micro finish on the engagement surfaces of the hammer and sear. That allows us to control the parallelism, the angular alignment, which allows us to get the perfectly crisp and trigger pull of a poundage of whatever is appropriate for the application the customer wants on their pistol. We've also developed a lubricant which is intended only for these two engagement surfaces where the sear engages the cock notch of the hammer, and it will extend the service life of the components.
All right, hold up. Oh, we've got an edit point here. 3.
Hold on, Johnny, where am I?
3, 2, 1.
Johnny, this is a special lubricant we call Trigger Job. Trigger Job is intended for the specific application to the engagement surface of your trigger group. In this case, the sear tip and the cock notch on the hammer. It's a high viscosity lubricant. It has a very adhesive ability, which means when the gun gets hot or gets hot outside, the lubricant will not run off of the surfaces that we've applied them to. This lubricant will extend the service life of the components as well as reduce the trigger pull simply by its application. Some people have said the application of this lubricant is in itself like doing a trigger job. And the last thing I wanted to discuss is a new product I'm working on for the future, and this is a replacement frame that will replace the original frame, your 1911. And what this frame is going to give you is it's going to give you a total capacity of going from 8 rounds of a standard 1911 to 13 rounds with this new frame. Additionally, the new frame is going to have single action and double action capability, and what we're trying to do is make this old warhorse, the 1911, as such that it'll be competitive with any of the brand new pistols on the market today, which have double action and single action and all the features that make them popular, such as high capacity. And Johnny, that's about all we have to talk about today. We sure thank you for coming to Austin, Texas, and look forward to seeing you again.
Okay, take 2 on the frame and outro. Edit. 3, 2, 1.
Johnny, one more thing I want to tell you about today is a new frame that I'm working on. It's a replacement frame for the old 1911 pistol. The replacement frame being the silver part you can see here. This one looks a little rough because it's an early prototype, but it's going to be an exciting product when we go to market with it, because what it's going to do is this replacement is going to increase the capacity of your old 1911 from 8 rounds to 13 rounds. Additionally, it's going to have double action capability. My intention is that when you replace your old frame with this one, is you now have a pistol that is up to date, state of the art, as any of the brand new pistols which are on the market today offering double action and high capacity. Of course, we'll be doing it with the old dependable caliber 45. With that said, we'll talk about that in the future. Johnny, why don't we go back into the shop and take this hammer and sear and install it in a pistol and see just what kind of trigger job we can do for you today.
We'll be happy we're here.
We'll be happy we're here.
All right. Edit. 3, 2, 1.
Johnny, we're back in the stock room here at McCormick Corporation. We don't really have a gunsmithing operation, so we're going to make do here. This individual is David Locke. David Locke is in charge of all engineering services for the products that we manufacture. He He does the research and development, the designs, and he's the walking, talking, two-legged secret weapon that we have here at CMC. And what we're going to do is we're going to install that hammer and sear, which, by the way, folks, we let Johnny pick out of inventory here, so just to show everybody this is not a fixed or controlled experiment here. And what we're going to do is try and demonstrate for your viewers how simple it is to get a master grade trigger pull on that 1911. Okay, let's do it, David.
What we have here is a standard Series 70 1911. I've had it for several years now. I keep it around as an example of a gun that hadn't been modified. It has all stock parts on it, and I have trigger weights here up to about 4¼ pounds, and it's over that. It's probably around a 6-pound trigger pull, pretty standard, out of the box trigger pull you get on the Colt. What I'm going to do is I'm going to install a lock model hammer and one of our standard semi-prep sears into the gun. Now, because I'm going to be putting a lock style hammer into it, I'm going to have to change the grip safety to have the relief for the hammer spur. So I'm going to use a modified grip safety. And that'll be the thing we're going to change on it. So I'm just going to disassemble the gun and put the parts in.
Johnny, while he's doing this, I want your viewers to understand that this is intended to be done by qualified personnel. We always recommend that the parts be installed by an experienced professional gunsmith familiar with the 1911. However, anyone that's qualified to disassemble and reassemble their pistol can effectively make the change and end up with the proper trigger pull. One thing you always have to be cognizant of is that the safety mechanism is still functioning as appropriate, and understand that the way you tune the disconnect and the sear spring, which is this leaf spring here, this being the disconnect spring, this being the sear spring, that the way you tune those items, as well as the tension that you have in your mainspring, will definitely affect the resulting trigger pull.
Now, one of the things you have to do whenever you disassemble a gun like this is to make sure that you don't have any burrs or anything else inside of the frame, because the parts that we're supplying are basically to the maximum material condition of what the tolerance would be for the Colt factory parts. This is purposely done to take up any slack and slop you would have in the parts so you could effect the best possible trigger job, plus to give the master gunsmith the ability to tune the gun exactly the way he wants it, because every gun is unique. Now, one thing about this particular firearm is that the hole for the sear pin is actually not aligned. This gun probably shouldn't have left the factory the way it was. When I put the sear pin into it, I can't get it to go all the way across. It locks into position. But even with that, not being square, we're going to be able to effect a relatively good trigger job by just using the standard components into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a stone, I'm going to stone the inside of the frame a little bit just to knock off any burrs that might be in here. Because as I was taking it apart, I noticed this one had a couple of burrs on the inside. Let's see now if the standard sear will fit into it. Appears that it does. Going to see if it fits on the sear pin. It does. Does the hammer fit on the hammer pin, which is rolled someplace? There it is. It does. Good. Okay. Parts be there. So we're going to rob the strut pin and the strut from the other hammer. Now, one of the things that's important to remember is that whenever we use a new part like this, that it's very important we have lots of lubrication on it, because we have these finely micro-honed finishes on these things, and if you have metal-to-metal contact, you're going to scar this fine finish. So we're going to use some of our special purpose lubricant, our trigger job, to put on to the part to make sure that it's safe. That it's not safe, it's safe for the parts themselves. Doing a very good job here.
I gotta have a point so I can let myself know in the studio.
Okay.
Hit it. 3, 2, 1.
Now that I have the strut in place, I'm going to make sure that the part is actually safe. It needs to be inspected. It needs to be looked at from a safety standpoint. I need to make sure there's not anything to impede the part falling to the half copper safety notch. And I need to check to make sure the hammer hooks are full and square. You know, even though they go through a safety inspection process and a quality control and a quality assurance check, you know, when they leave here, it's always good that somebody inspects to make sure the part, you know, meets the requirements. Part appears to be okay. We're going to put some lube on both the trigger hooks. This is trigger job. Very tenacious material. It's made to be used only upon surfaces like that. Now we're going to take the disconnector. We're going to inspect it for burrs. Appears to be relatively free. Disconnect. We'll do the same thing with sear. We'll inspect the sear for the same thing. Checking all the edges to make sure they're square. No bad things, no burrs. Looks in good shape. Trigger job on the sear face.
You know, Johnny, as David's working here, I want to reiterate all the items that David says to look for, such as the burrs and the relationship of one part to another. It's why we want to really make it clear to your viewer that this is not something to be done for people to have a superficial knowledge of their firearm. As simple as I say it is, the factor that is not simple is to always maintain safety, and safety is what's important with a firearm. If I can, Johnny, I'd like to tell you the 4 principles of safety that we practice here at Chip McCormick with firearms. And the first principle of safety is that we always treat a firearm as if it's loaded. No matter how certain we are that that firearm is not loaded, we always want to treat it that way. We want to respect it as if it's loaded. The second principle of safety we practice here is that we never allow the firearm to be pointed at any object that we're not willing to destroy with that firearm. Thirdly, we don't want to intentionally ever point the pistol at an object that we've not already identified as a viable target. And the fourth principle of safety is that you never put your finger on the trigger or shoot that pistol until you have a proper grip, shooting position, and you've identified your target well and you're focused on the front sight. Looks like David's just about accomplished this modification here, and we're going to get to find out what we end up with. I want to reiterate that the resulting trigger pull is going to be not just a result of the installation, but a result of how you tune the springs in the pistol. See how we did here. Well, being the old competitor that I used to be, I've got to say that's about a nice 3.5 pound, very clean, crisp braking trigger. David, why don't we weigh that? Let's see what we ended up with. Now, I believe David said we started out at 6 pounds. And the trigger, it wasn't real bad, but it wasn't a real clean break. It's certainly nothing that a competitor would enjoy.
You underestimated a bit there.
Underestimated, huh? What are we at? About 4.5 pounds?
4.25.
4.25. I'll tell you what, why don't we show the viewers how we would reduce that trigger pull.
Okay. See again what it does.
Now then, let's get yours truly.
Okay.
In the edge of things. Now then. How are we going to do that same sequence over? Edit. 3, 2, 1. Now, friends, earlier I had personally tested the trigger pull on this particular gun, and we're going to weigh it. It was, I believe, what, 6 pounds?
A little over 6 pounds.
A little over 6 pounds, which is fairly common for a stock Colt. And we're going to be doing some demonstrations on the program on how much easier it is to accurately shoot a gun if you have a good, safe but light trigger pull that has the qualities that will really, it'll help your accuracy, it'll help your speed in shooting, and certainly it has a tremendous psychological effect.
Well, and let me say, Johnny, light isn't necessary to shoot the gun well. It's the feel of the trigger, that the trigger have a good, clean, crisp release, because no matter how well you squeeze and how good your grip is and how good you are on that front side, if that trigger has movement and creep or a bad release, no one's going to shoot it well.
Well, consistency.
Consistency.
We see that constantly. You can work with almost any situation if it's consistent. If you know what to expect every time. And certainly, if you have good conditions in your firearm that are consistent, you know what to expect, and it just helps you overall. Well, Dave, let's see what we come up with since you put the.
And Johnny, around here, in our opinion, gun control is good trigger control.
You'll see what he's doing. He's giving it just a little bit of break-in there a few times to get to let the parts get sort of mated to each other. That's okay. We will edit at this point.
Okay.
All right. Well. All right. Now let me get out of this and come back to that. All right. Edit. 3, 2, 1. All right, friends. What we've done, we're going to weigh the trigger pull. We know it was 6.5 pounds at first. So go ahead, David. Let's do that right now and show just what these components have done. And he is letting the parts mate slightly with each other there. So now it's breaking at what?
Between 4 and 4 1/4 pounds.
Well, now, honestly, on a carry gun, 4 pounds or so, as that's about as light as you want to go.
That's a good trigger, and of course, an NRA bullseye competition, they have to have at least a 4-pound trigger. So all those fantastic groups that those excellent shooters, those master grade shooters are shooting, which are groups like this at 50 yards, they're doing with a 4-pound trigger. As I say, Johnny, again, it's the feel of that trigger that is so important, not just the poundage of pull.
Oh yeah, much nicer. You can really tell the difference in feel of. Oh yeah.
It's the difference of day and night.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it really is. It really is.
Now, for our purposes, myself anyway, I like about a 3.5-pound trigger. So why don't we just real quickly here, if you'll give us a moment, we'll show you how we would bring that trigger pull down to about 3 1/4, 3.5 pounds.
For someone that wants
Yeah,
to,
for someone that wants to tune their own trigger pull to whatever poundage that you feel is appropriate for your application.
All right. Here we go. All right, here we go. Edit 3, 2, 1.
Basically, it involves tuning the 3-leaf spring, which controls the grip safety on this portion here. The middle portion is for the disc connector, and the one on the outboard side here would be for the sear itself. Now, you're at the mercy of whatever your trigger pull is as to what this spring is. Whatever spring pressure you have that's given by this is going to be ultimately the lightest that your trigger pull could be. That, along with the friction you have between the sear and the hammer, is going to add more to it. Plus, in the case of what we've done geometry-wise, we basically have to cam the hammer back approximately 90 millionths of an inch, which is a little bit less than 1/10,000th of a thousandth of an inch, what it boils down to. So, because of that, whatever I set the sear spring to, the trigger is going to end up being about 1/8 of an ounce. You see about 2 ounces to 4 ounces more than whatever that's going to be. So therefore, I need to qualify this spring now, is what it boils down to. So I'm going to place it back in the gun. I'm just going to get an idea of what it takes to compress this spring. Now this is one of the things where you really need to have a qualified gunsmith doing it, because both parts need to be independently set. The disconnector has to have enough tension that it works correctly, as well as the sear. If either one of them are set incorrectly, the gun could potentially be unsafe. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is what many people do by just simply buying an aftermarket 3-leaf spring. I'm going to basically reshape the spring slightly to modulate the amount of pressure I'm going to have against the sear and the disconnector as far as that goes. So I'm just going to do it by feel. I'm just going to bend it a little bit and look at it. I'm going to eyeball it.
Now this is how many years gunsmithing experience that goes into developing this field, Dave?
It takes a few as far as that goes.
Over a decade
Yeah,
easily?
yeah, way over a decade as far as that goes. So again, I don't recommend this for somebody who's never done it before as far as this goes.
But Johnny, as we just demonstrated, just simply installing the parts and making sure that they function appropriately with respect to the safety mechanism and the intended function by design, we took that trigger pull down from, what, 6 pounds to 4 1/4 and had a perfectly crisp braking trigger, which I think would be appropriate for somebody in an NRA bullseye competition. You could have taken that gun right out and gone into competition with it. So we're kind of extending the performance envelope a little bit here. And this indeed is where gunsmithing experience becomes critical.
Another thing that I also wanted to point out, that I did nothing as far as polishing the engaging surfaces where the sear meets the disc connector, which is also important, or do any polishing on the disc connector. So therefore I have the friction between the disc connector spring, the sear spring, the sear and the disc connector, which I haven't continued with in any form or fashion. I've simply taken the parts out of the package, put it into a stock gun that's had no modification whatsoever done to it, and asked it basically to perform, up to custom, performance levels. And we got a very crisp, very nice 4-pound trigger out of it. Is what it boiled down to. Again, which would meet the NRA bullseye requirements, and somebody could go out and compete with the gun basically as it was.
Well, and I'll tell you, from a layman's standpoint, the way I would articulate what the engineer just said is he's saying we did with technology, with the components, what the gunsmith normally has to do to all the components with polishing and stoning. We've been able to overcome and eliminate some of the elements involved in a trigger job simply by giving you very well manufactured and close tolerance components.
And my point out what that means for the gunsmith now is that now he can start using his expensive time to work on the finer portions of the gun instead of doing some of the mundane chores of just, correcting the geometry on the hammer and the sear that you're stuck with, or taking some other aftermarket part and trying to get it correct in the first place. So now they can spend the time on correcting all the little features, the disc connector through hole, the disc connector, and the other things that operate with it. We're going to try it again here and see what we come up with. One of the things I want to show you after I get it back together again is that one of the things that this particular sear and hammer allow is that you can take a stock safety, or one that has been fitted to a stock gun, an aftermarket safety, thumb safety that is, and it's still functional. A lot of parts you put into guns, you'll have to put a new safety in, and you'll have to refit. In this case, if you engage the safety the way it's supposed to be and you pull it the way it's supposed to be here, you have no movement of the hammer. When you pull it down, you have no change in the way the hammer is. You don't get any creep, you don't get anything else, but you find with a lot of parts. And a lot of that has to do with the way the geometry is set up. Because you have a sear blocking thumb safety, if you get any movement of the sear, because you don't totally block it off, what happens is that you change the engagement between the hammer and the sear itself, and you get a different feel if you do this, and you pull the trigger and you drop it off, which is actually an unsafe condition. Let's see what we can.
Sexy.
How much?
2.5 right there.
Oh, good gracious.
Between 2 1/4 and 2.5.
It's called
All right.
2.5.
Now, we'll come back in. Edit 3, 2, 1. Now, friends, of course, as Chip and David have stated earlier, this the finer points that David was doing here is not for the kitchen table gunsmith. This is for someone who knows how. But as he was saying earlier, it will make a gunsmith's job so much quicker and easier. And what is, after you've adjusted the tension there, what is our trigger pull down to?
So let Chip guess where it is here.
Well, let's see. David, that feels like one of my old competition guns I used to shoot. We're definitely down in the mid 2-pound range here. And for the average viewer, 2 pounds is not appropriate. That's for a trained competitor to be using. Yeah, trigger pull like that is like an old friend to me, Johnny.
But for the average person, this is going to be too light.
That's too light.
Although this is still a safe trigger pull, the hammer's not going to follow the slide down.
Let's lock that slide back, Johnny, and drop it once and see if we can.
And you know, I hate doing this to an unloaded
not good
gun.
on a gun.
It's not good on a gun, but for our audience today, we're going to do it. And even with this very light trigger pull, let's see if that hammer, because you know, in some applications, when you get the trigger too light on a 1911, that hammer will follow the slide down, and instead of having your gun cocked like it's supposed to be, it'll be hammered down. So let's see what happens. Yes, it did not. It stayed in place like it was supposed to. So I'm certainly impressed with this application.
Let's see what it comes out to be. This is a 2-pound weight.
So I know it's over 2 pounds.
Takes 2 pounds. 2 1/4 pounds.
Whoa, 2.5.
Let's try again. Let's make sure.
For an IPSC club competitor, this would be great.
Right.
For someone, again, though, that is really familiar with their 1911 and the safety procedures on 1911.
It is. And Johnny, I'd say the average gunsmithing time to effect this modification is in the 20 to 30 minute range. So you're not going to spend a lot of money with your gunsmith.
It's right at 2 1/4 pounds.
And I want to say further, these parts are properly hardened because the tolerances we maintain, the service life is extended. You know, there's a lot of aftermarket components out there today, and they're good and they're appropriate for the various applications. But if you want to have the best trigger pull and you want it to last, if you use the gun a lot, which these competitors are firing 30 and 40,000 rounds in a year.
Right.
If you want the trigger to feel at the end of the year like it started the year, you've got to have the best material, the best heat treating, the best manufacturing process. And I want to be honest, Chip McCormick products are not the least expensive, but I feel like you get what you pay for with them.
What's the old Chinese proverb? The good taste of quality will linger a lot longer, and we may edit that out because I don't remember exactly. What is the bad taste of ill quality will linger a lot longer than the savings you had or something?
I have an old saying. When was the last time you regretted buying the best? And I have yet to find many Americans who say they ever regretted buying the very best.
We're going to edit that up. In fact, we're going to.
You want to do that again?
That's okay. We'll have a quick.
Well, one of the things I want to point out, I didn't point out at the beginning, was that I used a stainless steel hammer here also, which is something I really want to point out because we've done this with the stainless steel parts and very few people can
which
get.
Further extends the service life.
Let's do that. We're come back in. Edit 3, 2, 1. As you were saying, Chip, your parts are not the least expensive, but as you said a moment ago,
I can't deliver the best product to the public and make it the least expensive. It's just impossible, and we all know that. Everybody that's worked hard for their money and has gone out and purchased various products, and we have a saying here around Chip McCormick Corporation that has been very true for the last 6 years. I have yet to find an American who's told me he ever regretted buying the very best, and that's what we make, and we're very proud of that.
Well, I think that's well said, sir. Well, David, wasn't that a stainless steel hammer you put in?
Yes, it was. In fact, that's another thing I'd like to point out is that we are now using a stainless steel for some of our components, which is of tool grade. In order to use these things, most people will tell you can't get a trigger job like this using stainless steel components, and that's true using most stainless steels. Stainless steels have a tendency to gall and so forth, but what we've done is we've gone and used a superior material, and in order to use this, we have to do some special things to it. Not only do we have to heat treat it and then to draw it twice, but we have to cryogenically age the material in the middle of the process.
Now, cryogenically, David, exactly what does that mean?
Well, basically what that means is I supercool the material. I use nitrogen to take the energy out of the material, because what happens is by heat treating materials, we've added a lot of stress and a lot of energy into the material. We're going to basically reduce the energy state of the material and age it as would normally happen over a 5 to 10 year period. Now what will happen is you'll get creep, and sometimes you'll have some stress cracks form if you do this. But by doing this in the middle of the heat treat cycle, we can do it ahead of time, we can remove the stress, and now we're going to have a relatively stress-free part, which is going to extend service life, it's going to increase the safety, and it's going to increase the quality and the feel of the way the part's going to be.
See, friends, wait a minute. Now, you have picked up by now, I mean, this is not cut and file and see if it fits.
This is not Mickey Mouse.
No, this is not Shade Tree or Mickey Mouse stuff. These people are really scientific about what they're doing. They also have extensive use of computer technology, which is really making things possible.
It is.
In a few years in the past, it just was not possible.
It was, as well as the computer technology that's being integrated into the manufacturer, is what allows us to maintain the tolerances.
Well, look, now we've said a lot of stuff here, we've showed a lot. If somebody is interested, you have a catalog, I'm sure.
We do have a catalog, John.
And people can call you, and let's tell them how to do that, on how to get in touch with you and find out about your products.
Folks, we have a 1-800 number. It's 328-CHIP, CHIP. If you'll call that number, we'll be happy to send you a free catalog. It will discuss all of our products, how to order them, what their performance is. The magazines are included in that, and we're always happy to hear from you and answer any questions at that number.
And I might add, you saw all those trophies in there on the wall. Now, Chip, nobody gave him those trophies. I mean, he had to go out and work hard. And it's just like a race car builder or driver. Chip is a person who has experimented with, you've probably lost count of all the experimentation you've done on parts and concepts of what would, what wouldn't work. And anytime you have any sort of world recognition for your skill, that speaks awfully well. So we're so pleased to be working with Chip and his product line and the good people that are associated with him and his company. So, friends, trust me on this one. This is something that I think is really going to be beneficial to a lot of you. So call them up and get one of those catalogs. You will be impressed.
Johnny, thanks for coming to Austin, Texas.
Well,
We look forward to getting you back here soon.
Y'all did good. Looked like Hollywood down.
Well,
They look good, Johnny. I thought it was great.
get a little better sound here. And I've got.
All right. Edit. It's not it. That's not even it. Edit. 3, 2, 1.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very fine guest here today. This is none other than Colonel Charlie Beckwith, whom many of you will know from his Delta Force novels. Of course, he's been a military officer. He's been in intelligence work all these years. Green Beret, one of the most qualified military experts in small arms and all sorts of training situations and procedures known, in fact, worldwide. And we're so pleased to be here with him today. Sir, I understand.
Thank you, Johnny.
Well, one, it's a great pleasure meeting you, and this what is so nice. People come to this man from all over the world, many different countries, and they ask his opinion, because here's a man who has been in so many real confrontational or combat situations. And sir, I'd like to say it's a pleasure meeting you for me. I mean, it's a big deal for me.
We've had a good visit.
Hey, we've had a good time.
You've brought up a lot of things to me, and have you got a lot of messages, and I've been remiss for not knowing you earlier.
Well,
and I really have enjoyed it, and I'm very concerned. I'm a gun enthusiast, and when I hear you speak and the message that you have, it frightens me, because the people in Washington obviously are trying to take my guns away from me, and I don't like that.
Well, I think you're right, and of course, I'm going to venture to say that 99% of the other military personnel will feel just like you.
Well, they're not attuned to what's going on, in my view. I would hope that any veteran that's watching this program would be concerned that what he fought for this great country, for the Second Amendment, for the right to prove to the world that you're an American and a member of the greatest fighting machine, the greatest country in the world. And then I hear that we're going to stop all that. We're not going to put flags on uniforms. We're not going to have U.S. on uniforms. We're not going to put American flags on some of our aircraft, among other mobile vehicles, and that bothers me. I don't like that.
Well, I think what you're saying, we don't want to be part of a one world government.
I don't.
I
don't want my family to be a part of it.
Well, we're Americans first.
Absolutely.
And what these, and you know, sir, and he has asked me to call him Charlie. I honorably would say Colonel Beckwith, but what we're faced with is the socialists in Washington, and that's what they are. They're socialists in Washington, literally want to take our rights away as individuals. And I think your message today is to all those military people out there, and anybody who has an inkling of military history and knowledge about this man here knows that he is sincere, has been a decorated patriot certainly all these years, and his message, your message is to these veterans that we have got to get involved.
Spend 29 cents, and each veteran, if he'd spend 29 cents and write a letter to his representative in the Congress and explain that he is not happy with what's taking place with gun control, among other things that have been mentioned here on this program, I think you would really do strike a blow for freedom.
Well, I think Colonel Beckwith, Charlie, sir, will agree with me. If we lose that Second Amendment, well, we're dead in the water. Our Constitution is suddenly ineffective. Hey, friends, wait a minute. If we give up our rights as citizens, do you think that these people who are manipulating our government, you think they're going to give our rights back? Do you think they have our best interests at heart? Well, absolutely not. And we need to work together. And we appreciate, of course, all our viewers and you military personnel who have been involved. Some of you have fought for this country in the past. Some of you are injured today. Some are carrying scars from battlefields at far distances. We need everyone's help. And we absolutely cannot give this thing away. We absolutely cannot. And Charlie, sir, thank you so much for
really
meeting
enjoyed
you.
visiting with you.
We really have.
I want you to come back to Texas.
Well, hey, we're going to do it. Good.
Let me stir somebody up.
I'm going to get a picture.
Shit. Oh, don't worry about that shit. We'll do that later. Just stick with that message, man. I ain't worried about that.
Gentlemen, here we are at Fort Fisher, the Texas Ranger Museum here in Waco, Texas. And this is really a fabulous location. They have a facility for tours, and it's a very nicely done, kept area. All right, we'll take a look at this. All right. That picture of the flag. And I'm just going to take this. We're inside the curator's office here at the museum, and we're just doing a brief sweep. I'll tell you what, the office, they ought to run the people that come to the museum through here too, because there's really so many spectacular paintings and things that anyone with an interest in Western culture would really enjoy.
About half of them are good. I know where his bag is. The circle star said USIS at the top, and girl, you done. Jim's got it. He just traded it.
Let me see where y'all are. Be sure we.
He can also trade it to me. He only wanted $650 for it.
All right. Dan will have you move a little bit to your right, please, sir, because I'm going to stand right in front of that picture right there. Good. And we're on. I think our sound will be fine.
Usually will be in here. This room, unless, well, there won't be a pad thing. So go ahead anytime.
All right, well, here we go. We're going to edit museum piece, edit 3, 2, 1. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are inside Fort Fisher, the Texas Ranger Museum here in I'll say beautiful Waco, Texas, because it is. Let me introduce this gentleman over here on the left of your screen is Tom Burks, and he is the curator of the museum here. And this gentleman in the middle is Dan Agler, and he is collections manager. And friends, this museum here, we've just done a brief tour of some of the things they have on display, and it is absolutely fabulous. And I'm going to say this now, so I sure won't forget later, but if you're coming anywhere near Waco, Texas, you need to allot about half a day at least. If you're even remotely a history buff, or you just like to see things about our heritage, you need to devote at least half a day to this museum. Trust me on this one, because it is terrific. Well, Tom, tell us briefly what, I know the museum's been here for a number of years. I know it's much larger than it was originally.
Well, it's been here since 1968, and as you said, it's quadrupled since its earliest opening. Just one room for about 6 years, and then now we've got what, 9 rooms.
Well, actually 6 exhibit areas.
I've forgotten.
About 100 display cases and about 6 exhibit areas.
Well, as we were talking earlier, I had been here about 20 years ago, and I thought it was great then, but now it is so many things you've included.
About 5-fold larger.
Well, we think of ourselves, our mission is, to collect all of the old Ranger. I don't say memorabilia. I don't like that word for it, but the old Ranger artifacts and documents, and we think of ourselves as the conservators of that stuff. And we think it's our duty to interpret that to everybody. There's more nonsense out about Texas Rangers than there is about moonshots.
Well, I can certainly agree with that, and of course, you folks have gone to great lengths to restore and keep these things in good condition and preserve them. And I saw some things out there from the early European history. It's not by doing the work on the Texas Rangers, you've also included how a lot of that stuff got to be.
Yes.
And I find that really fascinating. And we're going to be looking at some things in just a few minutes. And I think that everyone, certainly that even is remotely interested in history, not only of Texas, but of the United States, is going to really enjoy coming through.
Well, I hope they will come down, and I hope everybody enjoys it as much as we enjoy.
Well,
Putting it together,
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that's very satisfying to be able to put something on like this, because a lot of these things are one of a kind. There's not another thing like it or exactly like it exists.
That's right. That's right.
Well, now, you're open 7 days a week?
Yes.
From
9 to 5.
Okay.
7 days a week. There are only a couple days a year we're closed, Christmas and closed, and Thanksgiving, that sort of thing.
New Year's Day.
Oh,
Just those
that's
three.
right.
Well,
The
still,
other 362 days out of the year.
and most people are not going to be on vacation during those times anyway.
No.
So, but they can call ahead if they have.
Sure. Well, we have rates for groups too, if people want to come down here. Tours, a lot of tours come in. And it's great for a tour because it's a way to get off the road for a little while.
Right.
And sit down and watch the show. And
Now, you have a video program
Yes.
here.
It plays every hour. We have a kind of a multimedia presentation in there dealing with the history of the Texas Rangers. We have 100 exhibits in here. That's the thing. To do some of those exhibits justice, you need to
Take some time.
give yourself some time.
Well, we're just going to high spot some of these things today, but it is really fabulous. So just stay hanging there with us, because we're about to go look at some stuff. Good. All the work to Now, friends, I think this is so neat, such a good thought. No man in the wrong can stand up against a fellow that's in the right and keeps on a-coming. Captain Bill McDonald. And you can see this statue.
I believe he was also the one that got off the train in town.
Without that barbed wire fence.
Yeah, well, it'd make short work.
And friends, you can see we have, in fact, we got a half a buffalo there. And just looking, it's a most impressive mounting. Now we're in the temporary exhibit here, portion of the Ranger Museum. 3, 2, 1. Now, Dan, tell us what we have here in this room.
This exhibit of flint projectile points represents major point types and time frames that have been established by archaeologists and other students of paleontology. The exhibits of the pre-World War I, post-World War I era of Germany sets off a collection of German Lugers that was recently donated to the museum.
All right, we'll take a look at that in just a second. I noticed that turning here we have a number of other spear points, arrowhead, different Indian
This is a
tools.
later era. Actually, arrowheads start about 1000 AD. From this era on, these others, earlier pieces are dark points, knives, saws, spears, lance heads, whatever, and the various working tools that go with them. These two arrows here were retrieved by Ranger J.B. Gillette in the late 1870s after a battle with Lipan Apaches somewhere between the upper and lower Concho River. It was also at that time that he almost killed a light-skinned Indian who later turned out to be a white captive, Henry Lehman, that had been captured by the Comanches and later traded to the Lipan Apaches.
Name these kind of rare Lugers that we got.
And of course, you're continuously running different exhibits through here.
Yes. These are relatively short term. You know, we keep them in here 2 or 3 months. And longer if, well, for some reason we decide to.
Depending on your source, I suppose.
Yes. And we like to change it pretty often, though.
Shoulder stop.
Because a lot of people like to visit every time they come by.
This is the World War II side with different military things, which is most interesting. And we're back in. Now this is a display of some exotic weapons from different places in the world. These are from North Africa. And really some unusual looking things. At 3, 2, 1. Go ahead.
This old Sudanese sword here, the long double-edged sword, you can see was made from a sword left in North Africa by the Crusaders. Probably handed down in a family, you know, generation after generation since that time. Probably stayed in use until the 20th century.
Some pictures we put up.
See this one here with all the gold on it. The whole thing is Damascus steel, watered steel, handle and all. It's a beautiful figure in the little panels there. Nobody's been able to figure out how they ground those panels in there. I thought you would change that.
I've got them there. I haven't had time to cut. Get this easy to have. Boots this morning.
It'll always be that way.
Friends, this is a combination battle axe and matchlock pistol, believe it or not.
And of course, this is from the Far East, this particular table. And there's some amazing things. My friends, these are some most unusual things from Japan. That is a real samurai sword. I'm gonna say, wait, is that a circa 1940? That's okay. Strike the samurai part.
That's really when some of the finest katanas were made up to that time.
My friends, you'll notice this thing here in the shape of an ivory tusk, and it's about 4 feet long, looking through the case, and it is an incredible carving. Let me get a little closer so you can see some detail. And this was, in fact, an ivory tusk, and it's been hollowed out, and you can see the fabulous detail that the sculptor or artist spent in making this. This is really something to see.
Great blade.
Friends, you'll see this old design here, the waves in the blade there. Of course, this is from Malaysia and Borneo and Sumatra, that area of the world. People certainly have a different slant on their weapon craft.
Here, just a second.
Okay. And the big three from Colt and Winchester, of course, friends, and I'm going to come down and hopefully backlighting won't mess with us too much, but you have the Colt revolver, the Winchester lever action, and the 4440 cartridge, which was the big favorite in the Old West with a lot of people. Well, friends, we have a picture here, a bulletin board of the Texas Rangers. This was taken in 1986, and I believe you would say these are the good guys in white hats. But there's a whole lot of legendary information about the Ranger group, and I would suggest going to your local library and just for your own personal knowledge to check out some information or books on the Texas Ranger organization. Of course, this is the evolution of Winchester from the early Henrys, and of course this gun on the top is this particular exhibit is the evolution of Winchester lever action rifles, and of course they have a couple of volcanic pistols, which was in fact the lever action pistol in the beginning that they started making rifles from that pretty much design. Of course, friends, the museum here has a fabulous collection of Colts, and for that matter, Smith & Wessons. All kinds of firearms used. And here, of course, is an Annie Oakley holster that's been framed. Most interesting. Also, they have a very fine group of sculptures or bronze type works of art. Now then, friends, we're looking at a case that has some guns that belong to Frank Hammer. And this was a civilian model BAR, a full auto 30-06 rifle, along with a couple of other of his personal guns. Of course, here's a picture of Captain Hammer and a copy of his, well, edit. We're out. Friends, here is a saddle that belonged to President Carranza of Mexico, along with a cased takedown rifle arrangement. Looks like a Savage, in fact, to me. But some most impressive things. Like I say, you just have to come down here and see this place to believe it. Edit. Our friends realize we're in Texas, and there's a lot of Mexican history directly involved with Texas history. And this is the presentation sword that belonged to General Santa Anna, along with a portrait of him here, and some types of weapons used, like this old flintlock musket, or carbine they call it, along with the standard issue Mexican soldier's cap or headgear. It's really interesting to see these things close up firsthand, because you can imagine the people who use these things, and certainly their attitude and how they went about their business. And we're looking at a case now, a collection of Sharp's buffalo rifles. And of course, hunting a big game was a major part of what a lot of people did on the frontier. You had to deal with not only buffalo, all sorts of wild animals, and of course meat for the winter. 3, 2, 1.
This right here is the Colt single-action revolver that was carried by Charlie McKinney, who was one of McNally's Rangers, which was one of the most famous Ranger organizations there was. You can see in the picture there, he's wearing this very revolver, which was a factory engraved .45, and he was carrying that pistol and wearing a lot of this. Well, I guess you'd say carrying a lot of this stuff in this display. You still see his blood stains on his necktie. He was wearing that when he was shot and killed. And on the handkerchief there, you can still see the blood stain. And we have a page from his daybook. He'd become sheriff of LaSalle County just before he was killed. And I guess he got a little bit too close to a bunch of cow thieves, and they thought they'd better get rid of him. It's still in the McKinney family. All of this stuff here still belongs to his descendants.
A couple of different and unusual Ranger badges. The one on the right there is an unusual style. This handgun belonged to a couple of father and son who were both Rangers. In fact, I think both of them lost their lives on duty, according to Tom. Of course, this is most unusual. Look at the grip frames on this particular Colt. And I assume that's Confederate money. That's a real $3 bill.
That's Republic of Texas.
Republic of Texas money. Some very old publications. Now, friends, if you'll notice in this picture, we have Sam Bass there, and up in the left-hand corner of your screen is the last $20 gold piece that Sam Bass spent here in Waco, and they have it on display.
And I'm sorry about that.
That carved horn there was carried by a Ranger in the Mexican War. And of course, we're looking at some old percussion guns, black powder guns, and of course at the top we see some flintlocks. And some of these things, they're in remarkable condition. Most of them are. All right, 3, 2, 1.
See this big old Southern style flintlock rifle there? That was brought to Texas by the Spiegel family. They were some of the earliest pioneers in the Waco area. And Spiegel was out with this rifle one day, and he was attacked by the Indians and killed, and they took that rifle. And it was later on recovered in a battle between the Indians and the Rangers, and it remained in the family until just recent years.
Bomb thrower, they called it one of the other.
3, 2, 1. Now, friends, we're looking at some old European weapons. We have a flintlock sword gun, or axe gun, in fact. Of course, here we have a crossbow, but this is the most interesting piece right here. It was a flintlock grenade launcher or bomb gun, as Tom just said, from around the year 1750. And most interesting, these things are here where you can walk right up and look at them. Now, friends, what we're looking at here is a very large crossbow, and in the center of your screen you see the cocking piece. You literally had to have a gearing situation to cock the crossbow. If you look carefully at the bow part, that's made of spring steel. That's why they had so much power, but it's also made them very difficult to deal with and to operate. And in this particular exhibit, they have a number of things from all over the world. And on your left, you're looking at a couple of punt guns. That's what they're called. And this particular punt gun must be about 6 feet long. It's a 2 gauge, gauge number 2. In fact, these were not held up. Now, friends, we can see the size of this punt gun. Tom Burke is about 6 feet 3 inches tall, and he has to reach up. Of course, the stock is resting on the pedestal there, but still you can get an idea of the huge size of that gun. And the market hunters used to use these guns to, they would affix it to the, on a boat, and they would go out and shoot ducks and things for the commercial market. But these are fantastic size guns. Now, friends, here we are at the Maximilian exhibit. Of course, you know, he was the emperor or assigned ruler of Mexico for a while, I believe, under Napoleon. And Tom here is telling us about these old cannons. And Tom, what in fact were these cannons?
Well, these right here are typical mission cannons. During Spanish colonial days, the missions would be armed with one of these, or any Presidio. It had a terrific impact on the Indians. They were terrified of a big gun like that, even though a cannonball against scattered Indians would have very little use. But they were found to be effective. You could actually fire it without hurting anybody. The old Spanish missionaries, I guess, didn't want to kill anybody if they didn't have to, but they didn't want to get killed themselves.
And we'll see up here, I believe these are some of Maximilian's leggings for riding, leather leggings, of course, to protect your legs from brush and so forth. It's really some amazing things to see.
Can you see that pillowcase? That's the pillowcase that Maximilian slept on the night before he was shot. And that's his tear stains that are visible on it. Can you see the Crown M cycle there? Maximilian was a decent man. He wasn't at all brutal. And in fact, he was probably a better ruler than Juarez was. I expect, though, that I would feel the same way the next.
Well, friends, that's an old strong box here. And Tom, tell us what you just did about the lock work there.
Well, you can see this kind of filigreed steel lock work and cover over the lock work. And in the design there is the double-headed Habsburg eagle. Maximilian was a Habsburg prince. And it's worked into the design that protects the lock work there.
And we'll see, noticing over here these spurs that are so unusual. Now, was that a ceremonial spur?
Well, it sort of was. You couldn't walk wearing spurs. You'd have to have someone put them on you once you got on the horse.
We're looking at a brass yacht cannon. It's a breech loader, and what it fired was essentially for signals from seagoing craft. Why don't you tell us that? All right, go ahead. 3, 2, 1.
Now, this display contains a collection of Colt Walkers and a Colt Patterson. Now, these Colt Walkers and Colt Pattersons are some of the most desirable guns in the whole collecting world. It would cost you $65,000 or $70,000 to get a medium quality one. To get one of the best ones, it would cost you $250,000. And wood.
Of course, here's a model of Colonel Colt's mechanism on how the revolver would work there, made in wood. And over here we have a Baby Patterson revolver. 3, 2, 1. Okay.
This exhibit right here, it's on Terry's Texas Rangers, and it makes a lot of sense here for Waco to have such an exhibit because Waco is very much an old South town, and 6 Confederate generals came from Waco. And in fact, this black hat there belonged to one of them, General Felix Robertson. This right here, you can see the flag, that's a Confederate cavalry flag. They were square, 36 inches square. And that old photograph is the last reunion of Terry's Texas Rangers, 1908. S.D. Myers, El Paso Saddle.
And friends, what we have here is a cavalry exhibit, and in fact, some of the Texas Ranger equipment came from the U.S. Cavalry. See some old Springfield carbines here, and of course a McClellan saddle and saddlebags. Okay, go ahead.
All right, this old chair here is a typical cowhorn chair. Texas cattlemen love to have these old chairs made up more as a piece of sculpture than anything, but they like to have them made up out of the horns off their own animals. You know, if they get an animal that had particularly handsome horns, next time they needed any meat, his number was up till they got enough to make the chair.
2, 1.
These are typical spurs worn by cowboys. Some of the most famous designs here, I guess the most famous one is the gal leg spur, the gooseneck spur. But the famous Bianchi spurs, famous Kelly and Crockett spurs, you can see that the cowboys liked a fairly ornate spur. And the Rangers liked a kind of light spur. I think that because they rode pretty good quality horses and you didn't need the big heavy shanks to keep them in line.
My friends, here's a collection of these glass balls, which I suppose before skeet was a very popular thing to shoot. They were replaced by the clay target, and with a lot of reasons. One, they're harder to see than the clay targets. This is a rifle that belonged to Buffalo Bill Cody, and of course some rifles of Captain E.E. Stubbs. He was a champion shooter, and here's his portrait right here, and one of his in fact, we have a Smith & Wesson handgun here that belonged to Pony Bill, and I'll edit that out because I don't know, we'll rerun this. This Smith & Wesson revolver was carried by Pony Bill, actually Major Gordon W. Lilly, one of the most famous Wild West Show exhibition shooters. And what we're seeing here is a Stevens single-shot target gun, belonged to a very famous target shooter, and it has a Pope barrel. It has the factory barrel, and also a Pope barrel. It belonged to Dr. Charles H. Wilson. He won the World Pistol Championship in 1912. Here's a personal gun collection of Captain. Let me do this over. Edit. Hold up. Let me get that now then. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Here's a personal gun collection belonging to Captain H.T. Gonzalez, also known as Lone Wolf Gonzalez. And of course some very ornately engraved Smith & Wesson and Colt handguns. Just some beautifully done things. And this gun has a, looks like a sheriff's model single action army with, looks like jade in the grip. This particular handgun belonged to Tom Horn. And if you remember the movie about Tom Horn, which has been in recent years, he was the stock detective who was hung, some say, for a bogus charge, but this is one of his handguns. It was a Colt. Okay. And we'll move on. We'll edit point. And this is Billy the Kid's Winchester 73 carbine. So many interesting, an old reward poster, many different things, just so interesting to see and spend time looking over.
He's the man who built the Texas Capitol. He was the superintendent.
Now this is a match set of Colt Navy revolvers belonging to General R.L. Walker, who was the artillery commander for A.P. Hill's 3rd Corps. In 1884, he was appointed construction superintendent of the Texas State Capitol building. He's credited with the straightening out of the scandalous mismanagement which had plagued the project. So, different Ranger badges. Of course, nothing on Texas would be complete without some reference to Jim Bowie. This is his sporting flintlock rifle, which was taken from his body, from his hands at the Alamo by a Mexican soldier. And here's Lone Wolf Gonzalez's personal saddle, and a number of different artifacts used by, in fact, past and, or that were in the past and current Ranger equipment listings. And friends, what we have here are some guns taken out of the infamous duo Bonnie and Clyde's car. And of course, they definitely have been sawed off. Different things that were modified, which were certainly illegal then, just like people do now. They make, the criminals are not concerned about whatever law's in place. They'll do whatever they feel like they need to do. So friends, what we have is some very unique and engraving that we're seeing here on some Colt revolvers, but most impressive. You know, engraving is becoming, you don't see as much of it today on some of our guns, but it is such a very respectable art, very difficult and time consuming, and some of these I'm sure took many, many months of work to complete. You know, that's true. That engraving is becoming a lost art.
Well, it is. I'm glad to see some people are taking it up, even though, it costs you $3,000 or $4,000.
Oh, my.
And this right here is Jim Bowie's knife. That's
All right,
the one
so
he's
stand up there,
carrying.
please, sir, and tell us, stand right up there beside that and tell us what that, I'm going to wind up on this picture right here. All right. Should work.
All right, you'll know when I'm gonna shoot, so maybe it won't hurt your ears or anything. Let's see. All right, edit. 3, 2, 1. Hello, I'm Johnny Rowland, your host of the Shootin' Show, and welcome again to this week's program. We have another great show for you. We have some interesting concepts we're going to be talking about in a few moments. You know, friends, they're already working on Brady 2, And as I've said many times before, now is the perfect chance to join the Shootin' Show Gun Club and help us, one, reach more people and instruct more people. But this is something you can do to help preserve your rights and certainly your children's rights to keep and bear arms, because we've got to reach as many people as possible all over this country. And right now the Shootin' Show is the best way I know of doing it, is instructing people in how gun owners like you and I, in fact, really are just normal citizens who happen to like firearms. And by the way, those of us who like firearms and can handle them properly, our homes are a lot more secure than those people who don't have guns and who don't know how to shoot. Well, let's get another Shootin' Show underway. And we're out. All there was to it. All right, edit. 3, 2, 1. Now friends, today we're going to look at a Mossberg 500, and this particular model is called a cruiser. And the one I'm holding here has the heat shield in place. It also has, it's in 12 gauge. And there's a reason that we would normally look at this gun under other circumstances, but today we're going to call this the next best thing to a handgun. You know, with the Brady bill going into effect, it takes 5 working days from the time you apply to buy a handgun so they can send their paperwork off to the sheriff or the chief law enforcement agency in your area to get the okay back, or in fact, if nothing comes back at all, you have permission, which I think is outrageous. We should not have to ask anybody, if we're a decent citizen or certainly responsible, to permission to buy a gun. And according to our Constitution, we shouldn't have to ask permission, but this is the way some of these lame-brained politicians, and that's what they are, they're lame-brained. And what they have in mind is their socialist Nazi agenda to literally take away everything. As you've heard me say many times on the program, they want to take away everything from us that shoots, so we will be in effect a defenseless society, and they can put all of their social programs in effect. Now what we're dealing with here is a group of people who think they know better than we do, than all of us out here who are just hard-working people that like to shoot. Suddenly we have these people in Washington, and they've got some clones down on local levels who think that they know more than we do about how to run our lives, and that's what this is all about. Anyway, as we're saying about our Mossberg 500 cruiser, this is probably the next best thing to a handgun. You know, a problem in a situation at home, if you're going around through the house, if you have a long gun, you know, you're dealing with something that sticks out there. Someone may be able to wrest this away from you or wrestle this away from you. And as I've said before on the program, you don't want to be in a wrestling match with someone, an intruder in your home, with your gun. You darn sure do not want to be in that position. Now, a shotgun is probably the ultimate home defense gun. One such as this 870 Remington pump, it will take literally any sort of load. You don't have to worry about whether or not there's enough power in that particular shell to operate the action, since it is a manual action. And a lot of people with a little practice can shoot a pump shotgun nearly as fast and accurately as they can a semi-automatic. For the shooting games and things like that, the semi-automatics, especially the recoil guns like the Benelli, have some advantages in pure speed when you're using birdshot. But in the real world, the slide action or pump shotgun is at really no disadvantage whatsoever. And in fact, in the normal everyday situation, the manually operated guns probably have some advantages, because they'll take any kind of shell, any different load, from a magnum load down to a clay target or a field load, and still function reliably. It's just up to the individual to pump that action and make the gun cycle. Well, this is where our Mossberg cruiser, see where the stock would normally start on this Remington, or for that matter on a regular old Mossberg, you have a pistol grip. And of course this barrel is an 18-inch barrel versus 20-inch on our Remington here, but you can see there's a dramatic difference in length.
Now then, that's one of the chief advantages that a handgun has as a home defense gun, especially if you have an intruder in your home. This would be a difficult, or shall we say more difficult, to manipulate in a vehicle for a police officer or certainly for a citizen now with the rash of carjackings going on. But believe me, if you got into action, I believe that there wouldn't be a contest if once you got the gun into action. But this is one of the great things about a handgun. You can have a flashlight in one hand and your handgun back here out of the way in case someone tries to take it away from you. You can shine your light, you can go around a door such as we go around this target here, and you can, the handgun is really so, in fact, handy. That's the thing that makes them so useful. They are handy. Well, now that the Brady Bill's in effect, some of us are in situations some of us have been threatened, and there are documented cases of certain individuals around the country that went to buy a handgun for personal protection because they had been threatened, and they were killed or brutalized before they could ever pick up their handgun. It is ridiculous, but that's the situation we're having to deal with now. It's one that we, in fact, are faced with. Next best thing, how about our Mossberg Cruiser? One, the gun can be kept in a state of readiness with the magazine loaded and the chamber empty, and you have a little switch here on the side, a little detent there that push up and you can pump that action. It only takes a fraction of a second. You can put a flashlight, say, in your off hand, whether you're right-handed or left-handed, and you can actually shine around with a flashlight in the dark with letting the muzzle, of course, go with your light. And with a little practice, believe it or not, you can function. You can cycle that action with a flashlight held in your hand. Now there are also some attachments that will put a flashlight, let it mount to the end of the magazine or barrel or even on the slide here on the shotgun, but there are some tremendous advantages. There's also the intimidation factor that this shotgun would have. You know, you talk about grabbing your attention, cycling a pump shotgun in the dark is going to have a tremendous psychological effect on anyone who's not supposed to be in your home. Everyone is familiar, even if they've seen it on television, which is pure fiction most of the time, but they think they have an idea of what a 12-gauge shotgun will do up close and personal. And you also have the advantage of using birdshot. Now on a gun like this Cruiser, even for someone of my size, anything over birdshot is a little bit punishing. These shotguns are really designed to be shot with a shoulder stock, but in your home now, in a defensive situation, even for shooting snakes or pests at close ranges, birdshot's all you need. The advantages of birdshot is they won't go through multiple walls. There's much less danger of you injuring someone else in your household, and believe me, up close and personal, they are about as effective a weapon system as you can get. Well, let's go ahead and load our Cruiser, and of course they go in the recess here in the bottom of the gun, the action here, and these guns hold 5. It happens. The miracle of editing, that pollen. All right, we'll come back in just before we start loading. All right, now then, friends, we're loading the gun. These guns hold 5 in the magazine, and that's 5 is plenty for what we're talking about. And of course, you can load them as I have 5. It's easy to carry a couple of shells in your pocket. You can shoot a couple of times, and then you can load them on the go. That's what's so ridiculous about this so-called striker or street sweeper shotgun. They do hold 12 shots, but a regular old manual pump shotgun like this, there are so many that you can shoot 4 or 5 times and then load it on the move. Tremendous advantages, where on the striker or the street sweeper, once you shot those 12 rounds, then you've got to manually eject them, which is very slow. They're very slow to load and unload, much like a single action revolver. Anyway, let's take a look at it, let you see it in my hands, and be sure and get my hearing protection. And you know, friends, for those new viewers who are just watching our program for the first time, we always wear eye and ear protection down on the range. There's just no point in shooting and damaging your hearing or your vision or anything else for that matter. So I have these soft gel earplugs. In fact, We sell these through the Bullet Express. They're extremely effective, and they're very comfortable, of course. So let's take a look at it in my hands and see what you think about recoil. So, see, that wasn't too terribly bad. And of course, I believe we have one left here. So, and you can aim the gun. And of course, you got to be aware you don't want to get it in front of your nose now, because you darn sure don't want the butt of this gun to punch you in the nose. But you can actually aim the gun and be fairly accurate with it. It's better than you might think. Well, let's reload here. All right, we'll let it. Hope that wind doesn't mess up our deal here. All right, edit, 3, 2, 1. Now then, friends, let's talk about, here's my standard old 1991 A1 Colt Gubbert model and the 45. Now, let's look at the little hole on the target, and that's why the Brady Bill is so stupid, because, you know, I mean, if you're going to a firefight, my gosh, you're going to carry a shotgun anyway. But let's take a look at the handgun, the hole on the target. See, we're talking about a little bitty hole right here on the target. Now, same drill with our 12 gauge shotgun, and we'll take our safety edit, come back in right after we shot with the 45. All right, edit, 3, 2, 1. Now then, friends, let's take a look at what the 12 gauge shotgun, even at this distance, will look like. And I think you'll agree, there's just no comparison. So this is something, again, is an alternative to our handgun, and here's what I would suggest doing. Go down to your gun shop. Now, if you're a woman, I would not recommend a 12 gauge. I would recommend a 410, certainly no more than a 20 gauge, because up close and personal, believe me, you've got plenty of power. At the ranges, you might have to use one of these inside your home. Please, the ladies do not need to get a 12 gauge. A 410 is good. A 20 gauge would probably be about optimum for a woman of reasonable strength. If there's any doubt about your upper body strength and your ability to deal with recoil, strictly go with the 410, because again, at close ranges, they're going to be pretty doggone effective. So, what we can do is you can go down to your local gun store. And the beauty part about these Mossberg Cruisers is they are inexpensive to purchase. I tell you what, they're probably one of the best bargains available out there in firearms today. Purchase because there's no waiting period, especially if you're concerned for your life. Purchase yourself a Mossberg 500 in this cruiser. If you want to spend a little more money, you can get, of course, an 870 Remington with pistol grip, and probably some others like the Winchester 1300. They're all good guns. We're talking about the Mossberg because they are inexpensive. This gun's going to retail for a little over $200, probably less than certainly you're going to pay for the average handgun anyway. So go ahead and take a couple of $100 or $225 or so dollars, get you a Mossberg Cruiser, and 1 week later, when your paperwork comes back on your handgun, well, you can take your Cruiser down there and sell it back to the gun store. In most cases, they'll probably let you do that. Now, you're going to take a loss on it, but heck, what's your life worth? If you're worried about your life, what's $100 or $50 or whatever? And you may find that you really like this gun anyway. You may want to get your handgun and keep the Mossberg, because you can get a shoulder stock for these guns. Choate in Arkansas makes a folding stock for this gun, and I can think of a whole lot of uses for that. So they really are fun to shoot and learn to deal with. They are extremely intimidating in a confrontational situation. And these guns, we've seen and used a lot of them over the years, these old Mossbergs. I tell you what, they've all been reliable, and for the money, you just can't beat them. So again, this is the next best thing for a handgun, and for some people, they may be a better choice than a handgun anyway, because some people are more comfortable with a slightly bigger gun or with certainly a shotgun. So this is something that we're concerned about a lot of people. You know, that's the thing about the Brady bill. It's going to hurt the people, the decent people, the people who sometimes cannot wait around to get a firearm. Because, friends, you know, the police are not going to be there when the attack comes. And it only takes seconds or very few minutes for an attack to start, and one of yourself or someone in your family to be horribly injured and scarred for life if you survive at all. And believe me, this is something that could prevent a tragedy in your home. And we're out. And I'm going to redo that. I didn't know if I had one left or not. All right, edit. We'll come back in. I'm gonna shoot. 3, 2, 1.
Asking a lot of people's questions and get a lot of people's attention. See that?
Okay, edit. 3, 2, 1. Now, friends, I've got the Chip McCormick hammer and the sear in my Series 80 Colt 1991 A1. And I tell you what, there's a difference in daylight and dark. And let's take a look. Now, this gun has never been known to be particularly accurate, but with the new parts in it, and of course great carbine ammunition, and of course I have a Chip McCormick 8-round magazine for a total of 9 rounds. And let me do that over because no, I need this one. I had the okay, we'll do that over again. Edit. 3, 2, 1. Now, friends, I have my Colt 1991 A1 here, and I've installed my Chip McCormick hammer and sear, and essentially, and of course, I use their trigger job lubricant, and essentially that's what the gun has now is a trigger job. This has not been a particularly accurate gun. It's been very reliable and, of course, fun to shoot, but it's never been particularly accurate. And you know, a lot of how you're going to shoot your gun is how it feels and how consistent that trigger pull is. And I help the trigger on this gun with those parts 100%. And there's also, I'm using the Shooting Star magazine that will hold 8 rounds instead of your standard 7 in your 45 ACP. So let's take a look at it on paper. It's easier to shoot well. All right. Need I say more?